What's up, guys? So I'll be out for 10 days. I tested positive for COVID on Saturday. I felt bad like Thursday and Friday a little bit. I could tell I was sick, and uh, some people I knew had it. So then I went in and got tested. It turns out I got it, but already this morning, even last night, I was already in the backyard throwing a tennis ball and running around with my dog. So I'm totally fine. All it is for me is I get 10 days off from you guys. So for me, it's gonna be a good thing. So I'm fine. But let's get you some work so the sub doesn't end up hating you again. Be on your best behavior. I'm gonna get notes from the sub every day. Help me out. If you want your grade to go high, have a good week. So do your best. Here's today's assignment. Go ahead and get out a piece of paper, and you guys will turn in a photo of what you've done at the end of the day. And yeah, we're gonna do a little review and a couple new things. So let's go to the first section, and I'm going to go fast because you can always hit pause. All right, so these fractions are the same, or these proportions are the same. You can use any techniques to know for the first three to get the missing letter, to get the variable. So for 26, if 5/7 equals a over 35, then I have to turn sevenths into 35ths, and you guys know how to do that. So if I had 5/7, I can turn it into 35ths, but I have to do the same to the top and the bottom, so which is multiplied by 5 and 5. So I get 35 on the bottom, so there's 35ths, and the top would be 25. So the missing number in this one was 25. 5/7 equals 25, 35, so a equals 25. Pretty easy. In this one, in 27, well, obviously for 12, somehow 12 got turned into 36. If I look at the top, 12 somethings equals 36 somethings. So that means if I multiplied the top by 3 to get to 36, or if they did, that means the bottom had to get multiplied by 3 also. So some number p times 3, or 3p, equals 45. We're trying to figure out what that bottom number, what number times 3 is 45. So I could divide by 3. And p ends up being 15. So if it was 15, it was 12/15 equals 36/45. And that's right, because times 3 works, and times 3. Same number on the top and the bottom, and you keep the same value. All right, so 28 you should be able to do. Basically the same thing as this one. 12 had to get 3 times bigger. What does 3 have to do to become 21? I guess 9 has to do the same thing to become, figure out what k equals. So those ones are really easy because it's really easy to see the pattern. You can use just proportions to basically find, I multiply by 3, multiply by 3, multiply by 5, multiply by 5. But what happens when the numbers are like 15 and 34? Where you can't really do something you want right away. Now it is easy to tell what this is supposed to be, because 17 over 34 is 1/2. So that means something over 15 should be 1/2 as well. But when the numbers start to get uglier, they're like this, like where they don't work as well together, there's a technique called cross multiplying, and I want you to write this down, cross multiply. And I'm not going to write down the definition, but I'm going to explain it, and I want you to write down your own definition. So I know you were listening. I'm going to be looking for this. Cross multiply, when you have two fractions like this, you can tell they're equal if you can take the bottom of one and the top of the other and multiply them together. So cross multiply. And you can do the same thing on the other side, and those should be exactly the same. So if you have two fractions, the numerator of one times the denominator of the other equals the numerator of the other one times the denominator of the other one. So you can make a cross, and when you multiply those, they should be the same. So the blue ends up being 34 times n, or 34n, equals 15 times 17. Now, I can't do this in my head, so let's see. Alexa, what's 15 times 17?
15 times 17 is 255.
255 equals 34n. Now I'm going to divide by 34 because I don't want to know how many 34n's are. I just want to know one n. So this is going to be n equals... Alexa, what's 255 divided by 34?
255 divided by 34 is 7.5.
There we go, 7.5. So for these two proportions, or these two fractions, to be equal, n needed to be 7.5. And when I cross multiplied, 7.5 times 34 is the same as 15 times 17. So if they're going to be equal, you can make a cross, and you can multiply the numbers that the cross hits, and they should be equal. So I'll do one more. For 30, 10 times 3.5, 10 times 3.5 should equal -7 times j, or -7j. I know 10 times 3.5 is just 35, equals -7j. I'm going to divide by -7 because I just want j by itself. And j equals, I know 35 divided by 7 is 5, but we've got this negative, so it's got to remain negative. J equals -5. So -5 down there keeps this. -7 over 10 is the same thing as 3.5 over -5. So this last one I'm not going to do for you, but I will draw in the cross so you know which ones are supposed to multiply together. Don't forget the negative. See if you can figure out what x needed to be by cross multiplying. So you're going to multiply them together. Then you're just going to divide by that other thing that the variable's with. Okay. Here's some a little bit harder ones. I'm going to copy down number 1 over here, and you guys can do the rest. Same thing, but these ones I just chose numbers that don't really work together really well, so you're going to get either a decimal or a fraction. You can write either one. I'd probably put the, I don't know, decimal maybe. I don't know. It doesn't matter as long as... So for number 1, we have -2/7 equals 13 over x. And I'm going to cross multiply, so 13 times 7 equals -2x. Alexa, what's 13 times 7?
13 times 7 is 91.
91 equals -2x. Now, if I divide by -2, I actually already have... There's my fraction. I even can't reduce that anymore. So x equals -91 halves. But it's kind of weird to put a fraction in a fraction. So you could do the decimal of this, which is -45.5. And I could ask Alexa, but that's what it is. So down here, x is -45.5. So -2 over 7 equals 13 over -45.5. Ugly. So number 2, 3, and 4 will also have ugly answers. See if you can figure them out. Use your calculator, cross multiply, and see if what those could be. This is a skill that we'll use down the road a little bit. Okay, good luck on those. All right, make sure you're showing your work on all of those. And now we're going to go to the graphs. For each graph, state the slope, the y-intercept, and the y equals mx plus b formula. You do not need to copy down the graphs. You do not need to copy down the graphs. All you're going to do, I'll pretend I'm you. I'm going to look at the graph. I'm going to write number 5 on my paper. I'm going to write, okay, I need to know the slope. So I'm going to write m on my paper equals, and you can just count from the screen, just like I'm doing. Up 1, up 2, up 3, up 4, up 5, up 6, up 6 over 1, 2, 3, up 6 over 3. 6 divided by 3 is the slope is really 2, okay? The y-intercept, or the b, is down here at -1, 2, 3, -3. So that means I know my y equals mx plus b formula, and you have to write that too. Y equals 2x minus 3. That was that graph, 2x minus 3. And that makes sense because it goes up 2 over 1. Yes, it does, and it hits the graph again, right? Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So, yep, it worked. 2x minus 3. Go ahead and do that for all 12 graphs. 12 might be a little tricky. Okay, finally, this graph. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. Finally, this graph over here. Okay, so if I'm going to try to find out the slope, let's go, I'm going to find out the slope. And m equals, let's see, up 1, up 2, over 1, 2, 3, 4. Up 2/4, which is 1/2. Okay, I know my slope is 1/2. But then for my b, for my y-intercept, it doesn't hit the graph. And I can't assume that I know what that point is. It doesn't hit it exactly. Maybe that's 1/2, maybe it's like a third, maybe it's some weird fraction in the middle that I can't tell exactly where it hits. So how do I figure this out if I don't exactly know where the y-intercept is? Well, I can use a point, and this is what you're going to do on the next two. I can use one of these 2 points. So I'm going to use 5. I'm going to use 5, 4. I don't know. Okay. So what do I know from my equation already? I know y equals, and I know what the slope is. I know the slope is 1/2. 1/2 x, but I don't know what the y-intercept is, so I'm just going to put plus b out here. I'm just going to make it evident that we don't know what that is yet. But I can use this point to help me figure it out, because if I plug in the point, the equation should be correct. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to use the point as green, because I only have green on this one. So I'm going to plug in the point. So the y point for this equation is 4 is y, because this is the y, this is the x. So I'm going to plug in 5, 4 to this equation. So 4 is the y, equals 1/2 times what the x is. Let's see, the x is 5. And then I still have my plus b at the end. So let's see. 4 equals 5 times 1/2. Okay, 5 times 1/2. That's 5 over 1. 1/2. 1 times 5, 2 times 1. Multiplication is really easy, so that's 5/2 plus b. And now we see why we were doing the fractions, adding and subtracting fractions. Okay, so b is going to equal, if I subtract 5/2 to the other side, I've got 5/2, but I want b all by itself, so I can get 5/2 to the other side. So b equals 4 minus 5/2, not plus 5/2, equals b. I'm going to keep working on it over here. Now, can I do 4 minus 5/2? Because that's what I need to figure out what b is. I can, but I got to turn 4 into, this 4 is really 4 over 1, so I got to turn 1s into 2s. So now I can go, 4 over 1 is the same thing as 8 over 2. I'm going to multiply by 2, multiply by 2. This is why we were working on adding and subtracting fractions last week. Minus 5/2 equals 3/2. And this was equals b, equals b. So b, we actually, when we plugged in one of these points into the equation, we figured out what b had to be in order to make it correct. B has to be 3/2. So we figured out what our b is. So now we know our slope. We know our slope is 1/2. Y equals 1/2 x. And we figured out by plugging in a point that b had to be 3/2 plus 3/2. That's pretty tough. That's pretty tough, especially when there's fractions in there like I did and had to figure out what it's going to be. So what were the steps? The steps were, step 1, when they give you 2 points, number 1, figure out the slope. And write this down for notes. Figure out the slope. 2, plug a point into y equals mx plus b to find b. All right. So, can I do that one? Let's see. First thing I got to do for number 14, and I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and 15 is the only one you have to do by yourself. So, this is going to be just like 15, or just like 13, except for I'm not going to graph it. I'm just going to see if I can use these 2 points and tell you what the equation is that links these 2 points. All right, I'm going to make an XY. First thing I got to do is find the slope. All right, so I'm going to make an XY chart like this. And I have 2, 7, and 3, 10. Okay, so the change in y's are 3. The change in x is 1. So my slope is m is the change in y divided by the change in x. The change in y here was 3. The slope was 1. So my slope is 3. Okay, great. I'm trying to figure out y equals mx plus b, and I know my m is already 3. So my equation is going to be y equals 3x plus b. Okay, let's use that formula. Y equals 3x plus b. But I already have y's and x's that are supposed to work. So I'm going to use this 2 and this 7 and plug it into my equation to figure out what b should be. Because I don't know where it hits the y-intercept. So here's the y. Y is 7, so I'm going to put 7 in for y equals 3 times what the x should be, which is 2. So 3 times 2 plus b. Okay, let's see. 7 equals 3 times 2 is 6 plus b. I think we already know b should be 1 because 7 is 6 plus 1. But that means I would subtract 6 from this side and subtract 6 from this side, or move this one to the other side, and that makes it negative. And that gets rid of this, and I get b equals 1. Sweet. I know b is 1, so I can complete my formula now. Y equals 3x plus 1. Let's see, is that right? If I look at my x number, this is saying I should be able to multiply my x value by 3 and then add 1, and that should get my y number. Let's see. Here's my x number, 2. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Yep, it works there. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. Yep, that is the equation that links those 2 points. In both cases, the y value is 3 times the x plus 1. So I figured that out by figuring out the slope and then plugging it in my y equals mx plus b equation to figure out the b. All right, can you do that for this one? 3 and 11 and 4 and 16. Can you try to figure out the y equals mx plus b by doing exactly what I did? Figure out the slope first, plug it into the y equals mx plus b equation to figure out the b. Now, this is a big step. This is going to be what we do tomorrow. So I just wanted to introduce it today and get you guys started. Okay, later.